Welcome to the Radiant Mission Podcast. My name is Rebecca Toomey, and I am here with my amazing sister and co-host, Rachel Smith.
Hey, everyone.
We're on a mission to encourage and inspire others as they're navigating through this life and with their relationship with Christ. And today we are continuing the conversation of birth with Courtney Valdez. She is a wife and a mother of 2 daughters under 2, and she is very passionate about pregnancy and birth as they have been catalysts for her passion and love for autonomous birth. She shared last week about her experience moving from a medicalized hospital type of birth into a birthing center birth that resulted in a continued amount of medicalization, let's say. Ended up with her daughter staying in the NICU unnecessarily and some breastfeeding delays and things like that. And so today we're going to continue hearing from Courtney about her story, what she learned, and most importantly, what the Lord taught her through all of this, because he brought her to a very different place the second time around when she had her second daughter. So Courtney, thank you for being here with us again today and for your willingness and openness to share your story and testimony.
Yes, thank you. It's a long one.
It's a good one, and it's one that needs to be heard and shared. And to kind of recap what we talked about last time, we often make choices because we don't know that there are other choices that we can make. And that was something that I fell into the first time. And it's something that you experienced the first time with your birth, where we kind of outsource our autonomy to other people, and we allow things even when the Holy Spirit or our intuition that he gave us is saying, don't do that. No, don't, that's not right. Something about this isn't right. But we don't know how to say no in those situations. Or maybe it's just that we're not in our thinking brains, as we talked about, and we're not in a position to fight. We're not in fight or flight. We're in, I just had a baby. Like, okay, well, whatever's going on around me, I don't know. And I think one of the things that broke my heart the most about what happened with your first daughter and then forcing her to go to the NICU is you literally were still contracting. You're contracting for a while after you give birth, and you're literally having these contractions, birthing your placenta, and in this post labor scenario, and they're just doing all of these things instead of letting your baby be with you the way that your baby needed to. And it just breaks my heart that happened. But I also know that experience, God got you through that experience for you to learn about birth. And it sounds like it set you on a mission, and it set you on fire to say, never again. I'm not going to allow my birth to be outsourced by other people in the future. Is that the case?
Yeah, absolutely. It was. And I made a promise to myself. It was right around when I had her. There was a sermon at church, and our pastor was talking about, being a victim or a victor. And I just knew that I wanted to come out of that situation. And even though it's hard, take out all the good and spread good, because I think way too many of us, we're just spoken over in ways that they're not from a place of discernment or grace when we're pregnant or about birth. And I was just like, even though I experienced that, I am not going to go tell everyone in the world how traumatic and terrible birth was. None of the people that were there to save me did. They, really created all the problems that had happened. And I just wanted women to know, like, our intuitions are God-given, and we have to start abiding by them. And birth can be a beautiful thing when we make the right choices and we honor God's design. Sometimes I sit back and wonder if God looks at us and is like, you imbeciles, I have to do everything on a silver platter, and you guys keep doing weird stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. I totally think that's what he thinks. He's probably like, can you believe these clowns down here. Can you
I
believe
mean,
that?
just look in the Gospels how Jesus talks to his disciples, and
Yeah.
that gives a good example. Like most of the time, the disciples were so dumb, and he literally said at several points, like, "Can you be so any more dense?" And so, while of course, God is a loving Father, sometimes we also look at our kids like that. Like,
You
really?
know, it actually reminds me, I think we talked about this a while back, Rachel, about the correlation of Jesus being the shepherd and us being sheep, and
Yeah,
how
and sheep are the
dumb
dumbest
sheep are.
creatures.
Sheep are like one of they're very intelligent in some ways, but they're also very silly creatures. Like they'll fall in a pit and they can't get out,
Well,
or
they're
they'll
not
fall over.
intelligent at all. They're literally the dumbest creatures
They're
on
not
earth.
intelligent at all. They have no
No,
intelligence.
sheep have no intelligence whatsoever. That's why they follow each other. Like they'll follow each other into a ravine.
Mm.
They won't even go off the path if, like,
We're
this is
talking
why
about birth.
dogs can run circles around them. Dogs are smart, sheep are
That's
not.
a good point. And that's why dogs can herd sheep, because
Yeah.
dogs are even smarter than sheep. So when we take that correlation and we correlate it to ourselves and the fact that the Bible says that we are sheep, I definitely think that God looks on us when it comes to birth and says, look at them leading each other into the ravine.
And you look at the disconnection that happened to me and my daughter, to you, to countless other women, and you go, the devil's in the details.
Sure.
The devil loves the disconnection that we're creating in women in these moments. And then, we sit back and somehow there again, we're silly. We're going, how are women so depressed in postpartum?
Mhm.
Why are women so full of rage? Why are women not succeeding in breastfeeding? Well, because this disconnection has been is just so generational between
Mhm.
mothers, so that
Absolutely.
to me, I see so much, for lack of a better word, demonic stuff surrounding birth. And like so
Mhm.
many people, like I get it, are quick to be like new age and birth. And I'm like, holy cow, like let's look at this first. The disconnection we're creating at birth is legitimately demonic. Let's face that and then face the rest together.
Sure. The
No.
enemy is certainly trying to find his way and find strongholds during the birth experience, because is there anything more beautiful than the design that the Lord created? Why would he not want to sabotage it? Why would he not want to sabotage the bond between a mother and her child that sets the mother and her child up for the rest of their lives together?
Mhm.
I mean, it's honestly one of the easiest things, places, experiences that he could crawl his way into to destroy. It seems like it would only make sense that he's here to seek and destroy and to separate us from the Lord. And that's certainly a place to do that. You know that I've said something along these lines, that I see it in the birth system. I see it in the modern day way that birth works, that the Lord has designed our bodies to grow and birth babies in the peace and quiet and harmony of whatever hole we decide to go into when it's our time to give birth. Yet we've made it into a spectacle. I mean, what do they call the OR? Don't they call it a theater?
Yeah.
In some scenarios, you go into a theater to get cut open, and that's not how God intended babies to come into this earth. Now, granted, there are 2% of scenarios where some assistance may be of need, but that's not the rest of the 98% of women. Yet we've made the 100% the 2%. And we treat birth as if it is a medical disease that needs to be managed, and babies coming out as if they're flawed before they're even given an opportunity to live.
Mhm.
So that's what, kind of where we left with your story was, we were in the car and your milk came in. And when you told me that, it was like, it clicked. Just like in birth, we can't really open when we're uncomfortable. And I know you had that midwife that you were uncomfortable with. I had a doctor that I was really uncomfortable with. And every time she would come in the room, I feel like my cervix was like closing. I think that the same thing happened with your milk. You know, you were under so much pressure in the situation of your daughter going into this NICU during COVID. There was so much stress. She was taken away from you. Your body wasn't functioning the way that it should. You were under pressure and stress. And then as soon as you are out of the clutches of the enemy, the clutches of the medical system, your body did what it knew it needed to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it opened up and the floodgates of milk opened
Yeah, yeah,
and
and
that's a beautiful thing.
we spent so much time at home. Like I joke, like we were all naked. Like we just wanted like, skin to skin. Like we just wanted to like in whatever way we could. We couldn't get those moments back, but we wanted to go home and like start reinstating that of like just being so gentle with our daughter and like really just loving her as much as we could. And like I wanted to be so gentle when I changed her diaper, God forbid, because she had been poked for so many days or whatever. Like we just really wanted to like love her all we could.
I think we all relate to the nakedness of the of those
Yes,
early days with babies.
yes, yes,
It's like,
yeah,
nope, just skin to skin and as much as you can because you know how good it is for the baby, but also for the connection between mother and baby and milk. It's amazing
yeah.
that skin to skin, so a mother's naked chest against a baby's naked chest stimulates milk production. Isn't that a miracle?
Mhm.
It's
Yes. Well, it's like
beautiful.
God's design, right?
Yeah, he totally did.
That's why I
Um,
say like anyone that could experience pregnancy and birth, like to come out of it and not believe in God, I can't relate because I had never felt so closer to him and been so led to dive even deeper in the word once I was like, allowed this honor of being a mother.
Absolutely. I feel the same way. It reignited something new in me as well after my first, that it was like, this is amazing. Even during pregnancy, it comes on as you're getting those ultrasounds and you're like, oh my gosh, this is a miracle. This is amazing. And when you realize how early babies develop, that's another thing that I don't want to get into the whole pro life, pro choice abortion conversation. But I'll just say it really, I mean, I already had my opinion on it prior to, but it really solidified it extra because it's like this baby is fully developed and it's
Absolutely.
20 weeks. It's fully developed. Now, granted, there's continuation of continuing growth, but it's amazing to me. I was amazed I had a miscarriage after Ben, and this baby was 6 weeks. That's it, 6 weeks. And if you look at those apps, I mean, they're like, it's like a pea pod, right? And I found the baby in my pad and it had a little nose already. Its eyes were starting to form and it had a cord and a placenta at 6 weeks. And to me, that was just so incredible. Like it's amazing that the creation that God has created in these babies just growing inside of our wombs it's
Like a
beautiful.
mustard seed.
What's
Yeah.
that?
It's like a mustard seed.
Yes, yes. A
Yeah.
mustard seed, exactly. So then what happened after that? You had your first daughter and then
Yes.
you guys decided we're going to go for this again. You
Yeah.
learned before you like what was the next step?
Yeah, I think that we were just totally united because of that as a family. Like my husband and I were brought closer together than ever before. We could have taken that to be mad at each other, to have had distrust in one another, to I could have been angry, but we really just leaned into one another and we were so in love, and we loved
Oh.
the baby and we were like maybe we weren't thinking clearly, but we were like, we want another one. And I was just so like hell bent into researching physiological birth and kind of just starting to unlearn and understand what had happened to me. And I just knew we weren't going to do that again. And
Mhm.
my husband and I had said like we will be doing this at home forever. And I just
Your
kind of
husband said
started
that or you said that?
both of us.
Both of you.
It was
Okay.
like we finished
Yeah.
each other's sentences, you know. As much as I went through that, he did in a
hmm
different way. But
hmm
he had some things to heal from too. And we just knew that we weren't going to do that again. We wouldn't be in those walls again. And so I got pregnant 5 months postpartum. My
Okay.
daughters are 14 months apart.
I love
Oh,
it. I'm pregnant right now, and our Ben and the next baby are going to be 15 months. So I'm right there.
Yes, it's so fun. It's fun. It's so amazing to like give your child like such a beautiful gift of a sibling.
It is. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
It's the best. Yeah.
And I don't know, like once you have a baby one time, your body's like, I've done this, you know? That's cool too.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just started researching it. I knew I wanted to do a home birth, and I did want support.
hmm
And I know that there's like this whole like dogma around like wanting support is bad. And I am fully endorse and support and love free birth and unassisted birth, but it wasn't where my heart was at the time. And
hmm
I like knew, I was like, there has to be a woman out there who can simply hold the space for me.
hmm
Simply hold the space. Like I hear about these fairies that are out there, you know, and I'm gonna find them.
Unicorns exist
Yeah,
somewhere.
yeah, unicorn. And I kind of created some of these questions I wanted to ask. And I really just like, I set on this mission of I will lean into my intuition, my God given intuition, and I will abide. Because it's one thing to have the Holy Spirit, you know, talking to you and around you, but to abide by it is another thing. And I just was like, I will run every single thing by God and his will be done, but I am not going to not listen to him again, you know. And like now with this daughter that was very tangible and in front of me, and we had gone through that, it was like, I am the protector. I am the protector of myself and my children. And like, this is so far beyond me,
Mhm.
you know, these decisions that you're making for birth. It's about your baby too. So I interviewed a lot of midwives. And I mean, usually like within the first, even some of them, like I heard their voice and I was like, nope. You know, that's how serious I got this time. And one
That's
of
how
them
it
was
is when
like,
you interview, though. You know, within the first 15 seconds if you're going to
yep.
click with that person or not.
One of them, I'm so happy I had the interview on the phone because my face would have just given it all away. She was like, "Yeah, well, I'm still requiring masks and I limit the amount of people you can have at your home birth. And you know, I'm only doing home births 3 days a week because the rest of the week I'm in the hospital." And I was like, "Bye."
You're like, okay, great. Thanks so much. Have a nice day. Goodbye.
Why though? Like kind of tying into like our conversation today is midwifery isn't necessarily the answer.
Mm.
It is really being informed and
Mhm.
pretty clear on who you are allowing in your birth space, no
You're
matter the
you're
type.
making a great point because I think something that it's important for everybody to understand is that a licensed midwife has to report to the state.
Just
They
like the
still have to abide by rules, and they still, what was the word you had used? They still they're in conference with the hospitals. You know, they still consult with doctors at hospitals and have to abide by, oftentimes even if they do a consult with a doctor and the doctor says do or don't do this, if they don't listen, they could get in legal trouble.
absolutely.
So it's something that I didn't know either until my midwife dropped me because of these potential legal ramifications. But it's important to know. And there are other types of midwives, birth workers, the underground railroad of midwifery that exists. There are a lot of options. But tell us more about kind of what you continue to do as you were searching for a midwife.
So I had just kind of learned about free birth and unassisted birth, and it was really interesting to me. And I just thought like that's amazing. I would love that. But I also
Did you?
want
I thought that those people were crazy.
I think after my experience, it was like there was so much intervention, yet we
Yeah.
were all still so broken that it was like, what do you have to lose? Right?
Yeah, exactly. It's true. Yeah.
So even though I wasn't necessarily ready for that,
Yeah.
I was
Even though
willing
it
to
wasn't your
explore
path,
that. And
you
I
you
really
still were able to
landed on
appreciate it.
I landed on, I'm going to ask midwives. I'm going to ask them what they think about free birth and unassisted birth. And that's going to give me such a beautiful idea of
Oh,
who these women are.
smart.
And it was so, that's how you know it was spirit led. I can remember walking into my midwife's just where she was at. And I was like, oh, this just felt, it felt like home. And just immediately speaking to her and just how she talked to me. She had even brought up like unassisted birth before I even asked. Like, it was truly just a match made in heaven. And I kind of like, in a nutshell, laid out kind of my experience with my first daughter, what I didn't want, what I wanted, my expectation of the person who would be witness to my birth and walk with me in my pregnancy. Like I knew I wanted no testing. No, I did one ultrasound and it was like, are you cool with this? Are you not? Like, let's just lay it all right out right now and let's really get serious because I don't want you to say yes and then at 40 weeks, get weird. And
Mm-hmm.
I mean, she still technically could have, but like I really just
Sure.
felt like she was unicorn. She was a licensed midwife that was with women, for women.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't imagine the things that she goes through that maybe I don't know about when you're treading those waters, which I'm sure aren't easy because the majority of them don't.
Mm-hmm.
But I had a super straightforward pregnancy. Like I think about this pregnancy and I think about this birth, and it's like, it's a short story because it was so straightforward
Yeah.
you know
Yeah.
our appointments I did go into my prenatal appointments. It was completely optional to do, but I enjoyed the conversation so much. She actually had a student, and we would all sit around and have tea and talk, and 9 times out of 10 it was not about a baby. It was just about life and birth, and we would talk about like a birth video we saw or something we saw on Instagram, or she gave me the book. She lent me the book Orgasmic Birth, and like we would just talk about what we had read. It was like a little girls' circle. It was like the friendship I needed because I
Mm-hmm.
also had no other women in my life who I could go be ecstatic about birth with.
Mm-hmm.
So I like looked
You were
forward.
building a true relationship with her. It wasn't
Yeah,
just about the checking the boxes. You guys were building a bond between the two of you.
absolutely.
I think that's what good midwives, their goal is to have a bond and a real friendship and relationship established so that then when you're going into the birth that you actually have a mutual trust for each other and that you know what each other expects or wants from each other. I interviewed a lot of midwives too, and my biggest question was always, what do you do with moms who have a breech baby? Because that was my previous experiences. And most of them are like, oh, well, we transfer to the hospital because we don't do that. But one of them who did have a breech experience, she said, I get moms calling me all the time because they're 39 weeks and their baby's breech and they want to transfer care to me because they heard that I will deliver a breech baby. But I'm not going to take on a mom like that when we don't have any relationship established. Like it's different when it's from, week, the first trimester through the whole thing that we have a relationship established and that bond formed that then we can trust each other. But to just take any mom in a desperate situation, it can go really bad. And I think that's kind of what's reflected in your previous experience of having these rotating midwives. You never really get to know any of them that well, or maybe you did one of them and that's not the one that you end up getting. So I think that that's really important in reflecting what you experienced the second time, that you were able to become friends with even the student midwife too. I think that's
We're
great
still
too.
friends to this day.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a camaraderie there that you were able to build.
Yep.
So that's awesome. Drinking tea together, talking about what's important. And it sounds like when the time came, you had a team of people that trusted you just as much as you trusted them.
Oh yeah. I will never forget this. And I've said this so many times. One time she was like, I don't think I'm going to make it to your birth. You're going to do great. And it was like, if you want to do unassisted, that is great. If you want to call me, that is great. But if I am not there for whatever circumstance, it doesn't matter.
You've got this. It's like
You
yeah.
are the best for your baby. because I did, like, one of the things that I struggled with the whole pregnancy was, what if my baby doesn't breathe? And it was like, that was so, like, nailed into me from that first birth, that is what I had to sit on and pray on constantly. And like I would talk with her through it, and she was like, your baby is going to come around. You're the best thing for your baby in those moments, and you will know if things aren't getting better,
Mhm.
things like that. It was so nice to even be able to, like, work through fears and move forward.
Mhm.
Yeah. So when did you go into labor the second time? Was it the same amount of time, or did you go over, or how did that go?
So first baby was 39 and 5, and it was 23 hours start to finish. Second baby, I was 40 and 1, which, like, everyone around me was like, I had told people my due date, never doing it again.
Yeah.
Ever. No
Always
one
add like 3 weeks to it, right?
Yeah, and everyone in my town is being induced. Like, I mean, honestly, everyone at the hospital right now is like 39 weeks. So if you see a 40-weeker or beyond, it is a sight to be seen.
Yeah, right? It's crazy.
Yes. So I was 40 and 1, and this time I took off work at 37 weeks because you just, like, I wanted to lean into that slowness, and I also wanted the time with my daughter.
Mm.
Because
Mhm.
I knew I didn't ever worry about the space to love another one, but I wanted to savor the last moments of her and I.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we got that time to just be at home and hang out. And also, I'm a hairstylist, so, like, approaching birth, I didn't want, unfortunately, to hear all the trauma stories, because that's really, like, doing what I do has really opened my eyes to just the amount of women who have positive experiences to the latter. And, like, I would, proudly share that I was having a home birth. And there at the end, it was like, nope, I am guarding. We are putting a protective bubble. I'm
Yeah.
taking
Don't
off
even talk
work.
about it. Mhm.
Yep. And I just wanted to, like, lean into my family. So 40 and 1, I had woke up and, like, I started having those really, like, low, dull cramps. And I was like, this is it. And I went to the bathroom and went pee, and I had blood tinged mucus. And I was like, oh, it really is it. But my first labor was longer, which I think 20, even I think up to 30 hours is still, like, a variation of normal for a first time mom. So maybe it wasn't long, it was just normal. Long to me. So I was like, we'll probably be doing this for a while. And things were they weren't even timeable throughout the day, but they were different. I will say that. Like, I made Jordan stay home from work. And then he was like, well, why don't you time them? I think he more so, after our last experience, once things started kicking off, you could kind of see, like, not necessarily worry, but he was more responsive. And I started timing them, and he was like, they're timeable. You should reach out to the midwife. I was like, I'll reach out to my midwife when I'm ready. And I think at 8:30 things had really picked up, more so that they were timeable, they were intense. I wanted to breathe through them a little bit more. I was still up and walking around. We got our daughter down, Stevie, at 8:30. I, like, gave her her final kisses, and, like, knowing that that was the last time I would kiss her, of her being my only. And I went in, and I had had my birth space ready since, like, 37 weeks, because it was like a fun thing for me to do. And I had, like, the cheesy twinkle lights and all the things, because it was my birth and I was going to have it however the hell I wanted it after the birth. I know everybody hates on the twinkle lights, but I'm like,
Do they?
uh,
I thought everybody was into that.
I don't know. There's so much, like, dogma around anything anymore. I'm like, let's love what we want to love. God, we're, like, not even supposed to watch birth videos anymore. I'm like, oh my God, we can't talk about traumatic birth. Now we can't talk about good birth. Where is there room for anything anymore?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I, like, started filling up my tub. And honestly, what was crazy about this birth was I didn't float away into La La Land. Like, I had really prayed on, like, I want to feel it all, but I want to be present. Because in my first birth, like I said, I kind of went away to labor land, and I didn't want that. Like, I wanted to be really present. And what was so crazy, and why I think Jordan was like, we're not going to have a baby until the morning, was even well into transition, I could come out of it and be like, so how's everybody's day? It was just so, but I think because I wasn't ever worried about getting in a car, or, getting checked, or all those things. Like, it was just us at home. There was nowhere to be. It was so amazing. And things did get really intense once Jordan came in from putting Stevie down. I want to say it was like 10:30, and he was like, "We're going to call the midwife." And I was like, "Okay, that sounds good. We can let her know." And so she heard me having contractions over the phone, and she was like, "If Courtney wants me to come over, not you, I will head over." And so she ended up heading over. And once she got there, I think I went into transition because I was over talking to absolutely anybody through those waves. And my water hadn't broken. I think I had said with my first labor, my water broke 10
Mhm.
hours before I had her. And that was really interesting. Just like maybe that attributed to it being kind of less intense.
Mhm.
Maybe my
Mhm.
doula was right. I don't know. I was in and out of the tub on my own accord. I labored a lot on the toilet. It was super intense, but I just
Mhm.
kept, attributing that intensity to like working. Like I could really feel her coming down when I was on the toilet, and I wanted to make sure I was like peeing and all the things. And
Mhm.
I had had like one really grunty contraction, and that was the only time once my midwife had gotten there that she said anything. She's like, maybe you'd really enjoy the tub, because she had heard me get grunty, and I think
Mhm.
she knew like she's about to have this baby. So I got in the tub, and then the guttural, just fetal ejection reflex just washed over me. And her and the assistant were at the complete opposite end of the room, just watching, and bearing witness. And things got intense. I could literally feel my daughter maneuvering in my birth canal. And she was like, "Why don't you reach and see if you could feel your baby?" The
Yeah.
next words that she said. And I reached and I could feel her head. And then seconds, my water bursts in my hands. And then I was like, "Oh, she's coming." And
Yeah.
she moved again, could feel her head. And I was like, "Okay, I don't want to rush this." Even in that moment, I was like, "I don't want this to be over." So I really like breathed through it. And then in one more contraction, she was out. And I just had like this moment. At that point, I think they had turned the lights on again because I had wanted it dark. And she just got to stand there still under the water for a bit, just completely left alone, and I got to take her out of me, feel her emerge, and then take her right up to me, and all by myself. And no one was touching her. She had a cord around her neck, and I was able to take it off. She was mucusy, and I removed her mucus, and no one was telling me that I couldn't touch her the way that I instinctively wanted to. Gosh, I'm sorry.
No,
And
don't apologize. You got me like
my husband was there, just touching me in awe. And I think he was like, "Cow, like, look at how this unfolds when it's completely left alone." And my midwife just looked over and she was like, "Good job. Like, I'm so proud of you." And I just looked at Jordan and I was like, "That's how it's supposed to be,
Yeah.
you know? And even in that moment, like you're not ready for a redemptive birth to then bring up so much more emotion
Mm.
of knowing like you just wish that your first had that. It's
Mhm.
like it's like this double-edged sword. And
Yeah.
I felt all those things in that moment.
Mhm.
But then I was just like, just flooded with love of this like little cheesy Vernix baby who was like, she was gurgling a little too. And that's what was like so interesting about the midwife, was she was still way away as she was working through that mucus and,
Mhm.
really starting to come about herself. And we were just completely allowed to navigate that ourselves.
Mhm. That
And
was
then 15 minutes after, I was having contractions and I was like, I think I need to deliver my placenta. Delivered my placenta. Um, we hung out in the pool for a little bit longer. They were like admiring my placenta. I mean, they were just amazing. They were like complimenting me a bunch. I'm like, I just want to give birth every day.
That's
And
so beautiful. What a redemptive experience
yes,
after such a hands-on experience. And I understand where you're coming from when you say that it brings up a lot of emotions about the first, because it's like, I wish I would have had this with my first. But I think sometimes, those negative experiences are our lesson. And the future experiences are us putting those lessons and knowledge and what we've learned into place. And sometimes we can't get to that place unless we've had the hard lesson. And I think that that's what I'm seeing in your story. That's just so relatable. and so beautiful is that, you went through something tough and you came out the other side even stronger, and then you continue to grow from there, and you knew what to look for. And these ladies sound wonderful, the way
Mhm.
that they just sat back and left you alone, and they let you catch your own, not let you. I
Right.
didn't mean to say let you, but you got to catch your own baby, which
Yes.
is how it should be.
Absolutely. I have this thing, it's a me thing. I think because of my first birth, that when I'm like witnessing this beautiful birth online, I do love watching them. And I see the mother fully capable. And then it's like there's a midwife's hand and she's got to
Mm.
like get in there, even for 5 seconds, and just like get a little touch. I'm like, you did not need to do that.
So
Use
unnecessary,
your
right?
brain. Because I would imagine even that body, that baby's body would recognize a touch that's not from its mother.
Mhm.
Well,
You
yeah, and it's like they ask for, or they should, and it sounds like your first were asking for consent to touch us, the mother, but they should also be asking consent to touch the baby because that
Yes.
is an autonomous human being. And as
Yes.
the mother, we are the gatekeepers of that baby until they can speak for themselves.
Mhm.
So, nobody needs to be grabbing their hands in there to touch anyone without asking permission.
I
Yes.
know that you watch a lot of birth videos, Courtney. Did you see the one where she wasn't, I think she was speaking Portuguese. Um, so I saw the translation, but I didn't know exactly what she was saying. But she was having the baby and they kept touching her and she was screaming at them, "Stop touching me, stop touching me." And they're like, "No, we have to touch you or your baby could die." And she's like, "Stop touching me." Those types of videos make me so viscerally like angry and upset for these moms. It's like, get your hands off. Or the woman who was having a hospital birth, this was one that's been circulating over the last couple of weeks. She was having her hospital birth and she was standing up and she was leaning against the bed. And this nurse or whatever she was, I don't know if she was a nurse. I think she was a nurse because they were saying her midwife, your midwife's not going to make it. You need to stop. And she just was tuning them out. I was so proud of her. She just
And she was like,
tuning
not
them
gonna
out.
happen.
And they're like, you no, you're not complete. You can't give birth. No,
You
you're
can push
you're not
here.
complete. And she's just like, not listening, not listening. They're like, you can't give birth like that. Don't push. You have to like at least lay down or something. And she just stood there and she delivered the baby herself. But this lady kept putting her hands all over her.
No, I know. And I
Not
just like,
right.
we gotta call that what that is, and it's abuse, right? Because
Mhm.
we teach our kids from a really early age about consent. And that follows into every area of our life. And one
Absolutely.
no is enough.
Mhm.
Absolutely. I couldn't
And
agree more.
I
This
just,
goes into, I feel very strongly that I think that the vaginal exams that we receive as teenagers and as young women are kind of grooming in
it
this
is.
way and grooming for these birth experiences where they're going to stick whatever they want to stick up there or cut whatever they want to cut. They're grooming us for their comfort and the things that they want to be able to do versus, hey, how about we don't put anything in there or touch anything unless, you know, something needs to be done. I don't know.
Absolutely. And I think telling, like in my situation, if I wouldn't have had the wherewithal or, my faith of, even when my baby emerged from me, I'm not smart enough of how to touch her,
Hmm.
and then you're like heedlessly abiding by your midwives, I don't know, your pediatrician, everyone else. It's like, no, you are innately designed by God to know how to mother, how to give birth, how to do it all.
Hmm.
And these people don't know because they've never bared witness.
Yeah.
They have people go to them who are like, just do this for me. So I
Mhm.
truly believe they just don't even know how to support something like that.
Yeah, I think that a lot of these Western medicine practices probably really miss the twilight days. Remember when they used to put moms in twilight sleep back in our grandparents' era? They
Mhm.
just put them out. I mean, what better patient could you have than someone who's unconscious and
Have
can't
you guys
talk
ever
back?
Have you guys ever read Childbirth Without Fear by Grantley Dick Reed?
No, I got to
No.
check that out.
He started in like the late 1800s talking about how like when birth got extremely medicalized, and he talks about all of those early interventions and how soon to be like the twilight sleep and crap like that, how they stopped because it was so dangerous. And that's why we call it practicing medicine, that somehow we're not coming to our senses about the interventions we're having now, even though our outcomes are gruesome.
Yeah.
you know
Absolutely. So I'd love to ask you a couple of questions about your
Absolutely.
experience. And the first is, what was the biggest lesson that you learned from your two experiences?
I feel like it's my motto now. It's to lean into my intuition and abide by it, and to not be scared to take roads less traveled. And even if I feel alone, I'm not alone, because God's always with me.
Hmm. That's beautiful.
Absolutely. It's great.
Now, if you could go back and change something, would you? This is a tricky question.
No, I don't think I would. I think that as hard as it was to live through, I think that those hard things are like our biggest lessons,
Mhm.
like to get through hard things, like, and those hard things take us to the better things, kind of, like, of course, in my perfect world, without knowing that through hard things come like so much wisdom, right? Like, I wouldn't be able to go through that and have the wisdom that I have now.
Yeah.
So I don't think I would change it.
Yeah. I totally get that. It's hard, but it shapes us, right? It makes us who we are. Now,
Yeah.
what is something that you would want to share with an expecting or soon to be mom, whether it's her first time or her fourth time? What do you want moms to know about birth?
Um, I'm going to try and tie it into my experience that you are the authority over your birth. Um, you are so beautifully connected to that baby in your womb that in your heart the right places to be to give birth. Do not settle for birth where you give birth. If you're looking for a happy medium for the sake of other people's comfort levels, that's really something I encourage you to explore, because birth is not something we should be settling for, and how we birth sticks with us forever. If the fight feels hard, which for most of us it is, you've got to ask yourself, what can I live with? What decisions I make can I live with? And kind of how we said, I think, in the first episode, of when we're picking our hard, what's harder? You know, firing providers, standing my ground, sometimes standing alone, or healing from a traumatic birth, potentially.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Courtney, this has been amazing. Was there anything else that you wanted to share with listeners today?
Oh, I think that's it. I hope that my experience just helps people out there, and that, if ever they wanted to ask me questions, they can, because I didn't suffer for nothing. And if I can help people through that, I would love to.
Awesome. And yeah, you can find Courtney on her blog, southwestbirthworker.com, or on Instagram at southwestbirthworker. And I will add these links along with the books that she mentioned into the show notes. So be sure to refer to those if you want to get a quick link to access her. But thank you, Courtney, for being with us.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, guys. Thank you so much for having a platform for Christian moms and, talking about uncomfortable truths.
Yeah, of course. I mean, this is what the Lord is calling us to do the hard things, right? And we hope that it helps others. That's our whole goal. So thank you for tuning in today, for being on this journey with us. If you'd like to follow along outside the podcast, you can do so on Instagram, Facebook, and on YouTube at The Radiant Mission. And today we're going to close with Courtney's favorite Bible verse. It is 2 Timothy 1:7. And she mentioned that she finds it most resonating to motherhood and all of the things inside of it. It says, "For the Spirit God gave us does not make us timid, but gives us power, love, and self-discipline." And we are wishing you a radiant week, and we will see you next time.
Bye, guys.